All right, peeps. On today's episode of The Kung Fu Genius, the genius will be answering all sorts of hot nonsense from YouTube. Lots of gems, lots of F-bombs, and lots of... Go ahead. Ask KFG about Bruce Lee's death one more time. Just come on, one more time. Let's get to it.
And every day, I practice martial arts.
Yo, Dre, how you doing, man?
I'm all good, Sifu.
You all good?
Good. Yes, Sifu,
Wow.
are you all good?
I am all good, too, yes.
Okay.
Here we are on another Saturday morning.
Despite what was just happening, are you all good?
Yeah, if the audience only knew what was going on just right before we hit record. all
Right. They
You-
never
Us
get
finding
to
out about your weird habits with your computer. Your computer that doesn't work. And then Mikey is like, Dre, do you ever shut down your computer and restart it? And then you look at it and be like, I just did. It's like, no, you just closed
just
the lid. Now we know why your computer doesn't function at all. So I'm going to Florida in December.
Why?
So you spend some time with my parents. I know he always gets separation anxiety when I leave. You know,
Oh,
it's
I know.
like,
Look, we
never
all
see
do,
it coming.
but he really takes it hard. You know
I know
what
he does.
Really
I know.
hard.
Yeah.
Problem.
Like every year for like the last few years when I go to Florida for that whole month, I can tell like a couple weeks before he's very
Oh,
agitated.
you know, when he comes into school, like he's often just like laying in the corner, like kind of weeping,
sucking his
gently,
thumb.
sucking his
For
thumb.
the whole month,
You know what I
yeah.
mean? For the whole month, and it's like,
Are you
know,
leaving for a whole month this time again?
No. I'm not quite going for a whole month or
2
just maybe
weeks?
3 weeks.
3.5 weeks?
About
Really?
3 weeks. About 3 weeks.
It's okay,
I'm
so
driving
he'll be
down.
back.
It's
Like a
it's soothing for me to like get in a car and drive down to Florida and kind of get out of the city and stuff, and then be with my parents and stuff. Spend time with the
Well,
family.
I get to be with the parents thing.
Yeah.
I get that.
But also, I got to get away from you. I mean, let's be honest. This is a little too much than any normal human
I
should
don't
be
get that
expected.
part. That's
So-
the part I don't like.
Yeah, you don't get that part,
No,
right?
I don't like that one.
Yeah, so as a result, we have to record a bunch of episodes
Yeah.
because the KFG comes out every week, so we need to have one episode a week. So we are like going to be doing 4 episodes in the next week to make sure that we have enough episodes through like the second week of January. So that when I go to Florida, I don't have to be bothered with the KFG podcast. But before we get started, I just wanted to say something real quick about our Patreon page, because our Patreon page is kicking some serious ass.
Serious.
So, for people who like what we do here, obviously
Smash
one
it.
of the easiest ways to support us is on Patreon.
Simply smash
And what I do on in Patreon, you can support us for like as low as like $5 a month,
it was 5 cents. It's $5. My bad.
This guy here.
I
this
told
guy,
someone
he's
the other day it was 5 cents.
He's the anti-pitch man. He's the
Literally-
anti-hype
It's like,
man.
yo, you could be a Patreon, 5 cents, as little as 5 cents a day.
My cups cost more than 5 cents. You remember that?
Like-
I'm gonna get you, sucker.
the Wing Chun Mike Lindell in the house.
That's
what I'm
right.
saying, man.
That's right.
Makes
So
me think of-
so people can support us for as little as $5 a month, and you get episodes early. So generally, our episodes come out on Monday.
Yeah.
Unless there's some major catastrophe.
Oh.
And usually what I do is I try to get the episodes out on Friday to all of our Patreons. So they get it like, 2-3 days early, sometimes Saturday.
They get that
the
sneak
episode
preview.
first. Yeah, they
Yeah.
get the sneak preview. And then what I also do as an added bonus, and even this is just for people who support me at the $5 level, is I give them the Instagram subscriber only content. Because if you're on my IG, you can also subscribe, and I do like a weekly Kung Fu tip or Wing Chun tip on Instagram. And I didn't want people to feel like I was like, oh, well, you got to pay the $5 on Instagram to get like those tips, and then on Patreon it's $5 to get the early episodes. So if you're on Patreon and you pay $5 a month, you get the early episodes, but you also get like the Instagram stuff too if you are not, if you don't support me on Instagram that way too. And then of course on Patreon we have other levels of support too, like I think for $25 you get the shout out in the episode description. For $50 you get your own like a 15-minute chat with me, and for $100 or the baller level a month, you get your own private KFG episode. Yeah, so we got a couple guys like that who have their own private KFG
Wait,
episode.
it doesn't get aired?
No. I just do it for. Well, you know what I do is I do it for them, and then I put it on Patreon.
Yeah.
And then I ask them, like, do you want me to put this out in public or whatever? And then usually they're like cool just having their own episode there or whatever, right? And I keep that for the Patreon guys. So those baller supporters get their own episode, and then the only people who can watch those episodes are Patreons, right?
Wow.
So there's a lot of like Patreon only content that's not just about the early episodes. And then so we have all these different levels of support, and that's really the best way to support the KFG. So if you guys are interested in supporting us on Patreon, the link is in the description below, and that's like the easiest way to help us out. So so anyway,
like and subscribe as well.
Like and subscribe.
Smash that button.
Hit that bell for notifications, because
Yeah.
sometimes you'll subscribe to a channel on YouTube, and then after a while you won't get any notifications because you have to do that extra step of notifications, right?
That Liberty Bell.
Yo,
What?
not the Liberty
that-
Bell.
The
wasn't a
division
curse.
bell.
Oh.
Oh, I was thinking of something else. Liberty Bell is a euphemism for hanging. All right.
See, now I just learned something new. I had no idea.
I had no clue.
And the only reason I know that is because I had a friend in Seattle who worked for an adult video store, and the adult video store was called Liberty Bell.
Wow.
And then I asked him, like, why is it called Liberty Bells? Because like your freedom to sell adult material. He's like, no, because it's like Liberty Bell's like the hanging down.
That is
And I was like, oh, okay.
that is something.
That's
There you go.
amazing. You
Yeah.
see, I made a Pink Floyd reference because I'm an adult.
You're adult?
Adult.
Yes.
Yeah, y'all's is all funny. Anyway,
I'm still stunned by that.
that's amazing.
Yeah.
I'm amazed.
Yeah, and also, Wing Chun Illustrated, it's like our big supporter. They've been our supporter for way back in the day. Way back in the days of Dudes of Kung Fu, before I even knew who you were. Just
True.
Nah, I knew who you were
Yeah,
back then. And now Wing Chun Illustrated has a paperback edition for their magazine, which they didn't have before, and you can actually get it through Amazon now, which is like big. Because once you're on Amazon, that's like that's major, right?
Get that Amazon Prime
Yeah,
delivery.
because then you're
Next
everywhere,
day.
right? So they still have the Mag Cloud version. Like you can still order like the print on demand version or whatever, but now you can get it through Amazon. You can get like a paperback edition.
Sweet.
And which is pretty dope, which means you can basically get it wherever you have Amazon, and you can figure out the best way to get that thing shipped to you. So yeah, Wing Chun Illustrated magazine on Amazon. now.
Amazon's
So
like worldwide, yo.
is it?
I think so.
That's a real.
They're going all over.
That's amazing.
Yeah, thanks,
Thanks,
Dre,
Dre.
for that contribution to the conversation.
No,
Did
you
you know
know
that
they are.
Amazon is worldwide?
Yeah.
There's this
Even-
thing called the
they're
internet as
trying to
well.
get
That's
out there in
about making
space,
big
too.
waves in the world.
Who's trying to
space.
get out there in space?
He's trying to get out there in space. That's why he's going out to space. He's trying to look at the demographics out there and check it out.
So what if you could transport back in time for a front row seat into the life and legacy of one of the most respected Wing Chun masters in history? Gong Sao Wong, a tribute, direct students on Sifu Wong Sonung, offers you just that. Through a series of exclusive conversations, 25 direct students share anecdotes, reflections, and personal stories offering in-depth understanding of the man behind the legend. Order your copy today across 12 Amazon marketplaces with free shipping. I absolutely love this book, and I think you'll find it an indispensable part of your collection. I can't recommend it enough. Get yours today. Go to Amazon, type in Gong Sao Wong, and there you go. All right, Dre, so what you got for me?
I got JPS Steve Shanahan. JPS Steve Shanahan.
All right, there we go. It's getting better. It's getting better.
Get it.
There. It's there, man.
I feel like you pronouncing his name is like the whole story arc of this podcast. And the moment you pronounce
it took
his name,
me damn near 100 episodes
the
to
moment you
finally
pronounce
get it.
his name correctly, that's when the KFG podcast stops. Oh. All right, go ahead.
Sifu. Mm-hmm. Here's something to ponder about.
Okay.
As you already know, Bruce was vehemently against racism of any kind.
Vehemently, what's that word again?
Vehemently,
Vehemently.
okay? Even
Vehemently.
turned down roles he'd consider demeaning.
Yes.
He'd make it a point in portraying the Chinese community in a respectable on-screen light. But here's the thing.
Mm-hmm.
You can make the argument that Bruce Lee was indirectly responsible for popularizing the stereotype that all Asians know martial arts. You could make the case that he destroyed one stereotype by creating another one.
That's a very, very good observation.
That
right?
is a great observation.
Yeah. I mean, we are children of the 80s, although we were born in the 70s. Our heyday was the 80s.
Yeah.
And I remember, like, if there was an Asian kid in the class, you assumed that guy knew martial arts.
Right.
All right?
Yeah,
and why?
100%.
Yeah, 100%, right?
Oh, yeah, no, that we had a rule back home. It's like, if you're going to start fights in bars, don't and go for fight. Start with an Asian guy because you don't know what he may know. Which is
Yeah, he might
terrible.
know something, right?
Know something.
Yeah.
That is wild.
No,
That
it is true though.
Such a wild stereotype.
it's not that way now, maybe. All right.
Yeah.
But when I grew up in the '80s, you know, and I didn't grow up somewhere where there were tons and tons
I
of
didn't
Asian
grow
people.
with Asians at all.
Right.
How about that?
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Given what you understand,
Yeah.
that makes sense.
How sheltered you are.
Yeah, so sheltered. All right. Yeah, I mean, you know, back in the '80s, that was the assumption. Why? Because you know we watched tons of martial art movies and martial art films, especially Hong Kong films. Mm-hmm. Everyone in there generally knew martial arts, and obviously everyone in those films was Asian. All right.
Wow.
So you had this idea, like, hey, that one Chinese kid, you know,
Yeah.
he definitely knew kung fu or something like that, right? You don't mess with him. Yeah, I mean, that is interesting. That was, at least in our heyday, which is just right after the whole Bruce Lee boom, that was the perception, right? And you know, I remember like being disappointed when I would like ask, like, I mean, nowadays you think about it and you cringe. Like in elementary school, there was this one kid I went to school with. His parents were from Taiwan.
Yeah.
And I think I asked him, like, do you know any kung fu? And he was like, what? He's like, what's that? He was like the math whiz, right?
Yeah.
And he's like, you mean like martial arts? I was like, no, my parents don't let me do that. And I remember just being like so disappointed, right?
Wow.
You know, of course, he was like the smartest kid in class or whatever. It's like his parents wouldn't let him do that. He's got real stuff like schooling to attend to, right? But I just remember going like, your parents won't let you do martial arts and you're Chinese? Like, what is that? Like, I just remember just being so confused, right? Like, how can this be? This doesn't make any sense, right?
Wow.
And that was the perception back then, right? Yeah, I mean, Bruce Lee didn't take on certain roles. I mean, he definitely went through a period, especially in the late 60s, where jobs were really lean. I mean, after, you know, Green Hornet lasted for one season. Mm-hmm. You know, unfortunately, it just didn't have the ratings for whatever reason, even though people really liked Bruce Lee. And I just think that it was under the shadow of the Batman TV series a little bit. And I just think that, you know, it wasn't quite the right vehicle, right?
I think it was the fear of hornets in general. People fear hornets.
Especially green ones.
Yeah. No,
Especially
it's
green
legit.
ones.
Yeah, like, it's a legit fear.
Yeah, I mean,
Bees and hornets are like,
I've been stung twice, and both times by a hornet.
Yeah.
Yeah, once in the mouth and once in the hand. It was the worst thing in the world. Yeah.
In the mouth? What are you doing? You running with your mouth open?
Apple picking.
With your mouth?
In upstate with my mouth, yeah. It's a very painful and slow process.
Yeah.
No, I just went apple picking. It was just a couple years ago, and I grabbed one of the apples out, and there was a hornet on it, and I didn't see it. And when I went and bit into it, it went right into the side of my mouth and flew away. And I was like, oh, it was so painful.
This happened like
3 years ago, something like that. Yeah.
You never told me this.
No, I tried not to share trauma with you because of how abusive you are.
You couldn't tell you because you couldn't speak.
I would have gotten that ass.
Hey, what?
You would have gotten the hornet's ass. I would love to see that.
Wow.
Getting that ass, Dre.
Getting that ass.
Yeah, so okay. What were we talking about again? Right, hornets, right? So, you know, Bruce went through a period where it was very lean in terms of getting jobs, you know, like he just, unfortunately, you know, Hollywood at that time, and one could argue even Hollywood still to this day, you don't have the same opportunities for Asian actors, whether Asian American or just Asian, to be leading characters in films and TV. Wow. Or if they do, sometimes it's done in a somewhat pandering kind of way. And so he wanted, part of Bruce's problem too, I think, was that he wanted the big roles. He didn't want like second fiddle roles and stuff. And he had to do a couple of those in some TV shows. And he did some behind the scenes stuff, like, you know, he was a consultant, like he did film choreography and stuff like that. But he really wanted to be the guy in front of the camera. He wanted to be the dude, right?
Which ultimately led to that, right?
Yeah. So there's also a lot of talk about how he turned down a lot of roles. And you know, because the representation for a lot of Chinese actors or Asian actors at that time was to play stereotype roles. There was never a play against type where it was like you would be the Chinese guy who was also really strong and, whatever. It was like, no, you had to be kind of meek, or it was like Bruce Lee said, like, with the pigtails and, and essentially playing a coolie, And he didn't want to do that. But I think part of that was also because he wanted to have major roles and he didn't want to have these kind of smaller roles, on top of the fact that he felt that maybe those depictions were also, racist and not what he wanted at all. So I think part of Bruce Lee not taking certain roles was a little bit of a mixed bag of him taking personal offense to some of it, but him also holding out for the bigger thing. You know what I mean? That he perhaps could have taken some smaller roles and worked up to something bigger. That would have been another route he could have gone, but he just decided not to do that because in his mind, he knew Steve McQueen. He was competitive with Steve McQueen.
Okay.
He bought a Porsche with a few $1,000s he inherited from his father at a time when he could barely afford his mortgage because Steve McQueen had a Porsche. So I think it's easy not to be an armchair psychologist, but to kind of see that Bruce wasn't taking those small bit parts because he saw himself as being a competitor to Steve McQueen. Wow. And so why would he then take these smaller roles, right? So of course, I have a feeling that some of, what is now kind of in a 2020 hindsight bias, place like Bruce Lee being super offended by certain roles and not taking certain roles, I think there's also part of it too that he was also holding out. I also feel that he probably may have occasionally gotten one or two offers that would not have been as bad, but he just felt that they were probably a little bit beneath him.
Okay.
And that might have something to do with it. So, when we look at the Pierre Burton interview where he was talking about, they're always looking for like the stereotypical type thing or whatever. You also can't forget that the first role that he auditioned for, which is that famous screen test that we've all seen where he's in the suit, the black and white one,
right,
where he's doing the, this is a crane film and he shows all that kind of stuff. That was not a screen test for Green Hornet. That was a screen test for Charlie Chan's number one son.
With Ed McMahon, and he kicked Ed McMahon.
That wasn't Ed McMahon, you ignoramus.
That wasn't Ed.
All right.
Who was that guy?
That's just any old ass white guy who was there.
That was
Ed McMahon. That guy was like 80 years old
That
in
looked like Ed
1960s.
McMahon to me.
You are in rare form today, Dre.
I know.
Whatever it is that you did before you got onto this podcast, I want some.
Yeah, exactly.
What?
No. So that
I don't feel rare.
that audition was for Charlie Chan's number one son.
Oh.
It was not for Green Hornet. That thing ended up getting shelved, and then later he got Green Hornet. But everyone's like, oh, this is Green Hornet screen test. It was actually for Charlie Chan's number one son, which is one of those stereotypical, as Bruce Lee would say, kind of chop roles.
Yeah. Wow.
So I think it's one of the easy tropes to say that Bruce Lee didn't take on certain roles because he felt offended by it. But I also think that it was easier for him to say that during the Pierre Burton interview nearly 10 years later after he had made Big Boss and Fist of Fury and had success. I don't know exactly if that's what he would have said in 1964. Ooh. Okay? So I think that we always need to be mindful of hindsight bias. We need to be mindful of always looking at things through a modern day lens and applying that as a template thrown over insert 1960s, insert early 70s, and then say, see, this is the narrative, okay? It's easy to say that now, and it's easy to pick out random things to support that. And certainly Bruce Lee would not have wanted to take certain roles. I'm not saying that wasn't the case, but I also have a feeling that there's a heavy amount of narrative soup that is dumped on a time period where basically Bruce Lee kind of just wanted to work, but also wanted to be the big star. Yeah. And so I think that he occasionally worked against his self-interest in that aim. I mean, it ended up working out for him at the end, with the exception of his untimely death. But again, you have to be really careful not to apply hindsight bias onto narratives. All right? Because it's very easy to construct narratives and meaning and purpose after the fact. And that doesn't necessarily represent what was going on in real time during his life. So, did Bruce Lee then single-handedly and unwittingly create the stereotype that all Asians knew martial arts? I think he definitely boosted that, but obviously it wasn't intentionally. And while I've heard from some Asian Americans that their experience growing up because of that was not positive. The idea that, sometimes people would say things, go up to them and go like, what? Like do those kind of Bruce Lee cat calls.
Oh, man.
Or they'd be like, oh, you must know Kung Fu, or assuming that they knew Kung Fu was probably very difficult for some Asian Americans growing up who didn't do martial arts or have any interest in that. Wow. On the other hand, I think the reason why that happened, if you can take away what people perceive as some kind of injury from that, is even Diana Inosanto, Diana Inosanto's daughter, she's also an actress. She said, her words, she said that Bruce Lee kind of put balls on Asian men. There was a perception of Asian, especially Asian males, being somewhat meek and not very strong and, not very, for lack of a better term, manly. And Bruce kind of smashed that. Mm-hmm. So you can see where that is a double-edged sword for Asian Americans growing up after that, right? Having this idea that, there's some people that are going to perceive that martial arts, like me growing up. Yeah. And then there are other people that are going to think that you might know martial arts when you don't, and you have no interest in that, and you're sick of hearing of it, right? So it's like everything else, it's like your mileage may vary, right? I think the best thing to do is to look at both sides of that story. I think it's just too easy to apply hindsight bias to narratives that we create 30, 40 years after the fact. Mm-hmm. You really have to look at things in the context of their time. You can look at things in terms of legacy. What is the long-term effect of what Bruce Lee did or whatever? But I think you have to be careful of pushing that legacy of what he means now to people and then saying that's what it was in the 70s when people didn't really know that much about him yet. I think the perception was very different. So anyway, what else you got from me, Dre?
Unbelievable stuff. Okay, next up we got Andrew Lin.
Oh, damn it.
What?
Huh?
What's wrong with that?
Dude forgets to edit out my F-bombs.
It's the demonetizer.
Yeah, the demonetizer. He's the reason why. Well, yeah, because I was looking at my monthly, YouTube. Like our YouTube revenue is dog shit because we get, each episode's only like a few thousand views. Because I refuse to, wear a suit and tie and look at Wing Chun videos and tell the world why everything sucks and just be kind of a negative Nancy. And then I know that's the path to million views. It's me just watching shit and talking shit about it. But like for me, what's interesting is that the audio version of this podcast.
Okay.
So people listening to it in cars keeps doing this. Right?
Climbing to the top.
And the YouTube views, because YouTube is not optimized for long form content. YouTube is optimized for 10-minute videos on a singular topic that outrages people with an outrageous thumbnail. That's the trick to get good at YouTube, right?
It's become
a long form podcast where you talk about multiple topics. Really, the YouTube algorithm really doesn't know what to do with that, right? But I'm fine with that.
There are some podcasts that have made
but obviously if you're a huge celebrity, those comedians out in LA or whatever who have a name, they can have a 2-hour podcast, but it's like, because Bill Burr is your guest. Okay?
I've watched 3-hour podcasts the other day.
Yeah, I know, but it's like, because you have Kanye as your guest, all right?
Right.
Like that's you can't say, well, there are long form podcasts out there that do well. Yes, ones with celebrities, right? They have name recognition, but in general, YouTube favors short form content. Singular topic. That's why like Golden Bell usually does really good on his Bruce Lee stuff because his vids are like 10 to 20 minutes. It's one topic. He's got like a saucy thumbnail and and we could almost take segments from the KFG podcast, like where I answer one question. And if we just took that, edited it, and then put video over that, where my audio is essentially we might do that at some point because we have such a kind of a store of content where we could just take one answer I gave to one question where I explained something and then splice in video over my
KFG rants.
Over my no, not like that, like over my explanation, and then repurpose that as a new video. I think those would do really well. But I don't really do the KFG podcast on YouTube for like tons of views. All right, I do it because you know, I think it's interesting to talk about this stuff. We have a small but loyal fan base, and I'm okay with keeping them. And also, this kind of fills a void for me after Big Sean passed, you know, because I enjoyed having these kind of conversations every week. I think it's also good to just see what kind of things people ask about and what things people are interested in and think about them and try to formulate better ideas about what people are thinking about and maybe bring the conversation further. But when I look at my YouTube revenue, all right? You know, it's like, it's never been great. It's a couple $100 a month or something like that. Like our YouTube ad revenue that we get is very, very low. I mean, they're YouTubers that make a living off of YouTube. I'm certainly not one of them, right? You know, there's some months where it was usually around like $250. It's kind of like what we do for most of every month, right? And a couple months we get more when we do like lives, and then we get like super chats and people pay in and stuff like that. Or we just have a random video that does really well, like a month where we did the drug letters, or the Jean LaBelle video did really good, or like John Little. Like those will spike up, and then I'll get like $300 on that month. You know, it's not like crazy money or anything like that. But in the last 7 weeks, no, even more than that. No, last it's almost 4 months now, I think, right? The YouTube ad revenue is going like this.
Steady decline.
And it also seems to coincide with Andrew not editing my F-bombs. That's my story, and I'm sticking with it.
The reason why you're not getting paid as a co-host, Dre, is because of Andrew Lynn.
That's right.
The
demonetizer.
All right. Well, I'm still going to ask his questions.
All right, fine. All right. F***ing son of a bitch.
Andrew, feel free to edit these in.
Yes.
What made you decide to go with the Scissors Gone South for your association's logo?
That's a really good question.
It is.
You know, it's funny. It kind of reminds me of what I just talked about in the previous question about how people love to add stories and narrative to things that are maybe not that big of a deal when they happened, or things that weren't like, you know, like, for example, like with Bruce Lee stuff. You know, you have, as a Bruce Lee fan, there are many layers to being a Bruce Lee fan. You know, you have, on the casual side, you have a few different layers of casual, like the guys who've seen his movies, or the guys who kind of like. I would
consider myself one of those.
Yeah, you're definitely a casual. But there are like a few different layers of casuals. And then you get into like the guys who are like really into Bruce Lee. And on there, you have different layers and levels and spectrum, right? You have people who are like really into his movie stuff, who can tell you everything about like the movies and the sets and the budgets and who was on it and all that kind of stuff. And then you have people who are like really into the Jeet Kune Do side of things, who can tell you about whom he taught where and what he taught and what the certificates, like Richard Torres. Sifu Richard Torres is one of those guys. He can tell you like in different stages of Bruce Lee's teaching career how he changed like the certificates that he issued. Like, oh, there used to be I'm just making stuff up, but like, oh, maybe there was a dragon that was this color, but then later he changed it, and then it wasn't Jeet Kune Do, it was Chun Fan Kung Fu. Like he's like he can tell you all those things, right? So there are like layers to that as well. Right? And so sometimes the discussions that kind of certain layers of fans have are like, you know, why did Bruce Lee do this and this here, right? And what ends up happening is like, it's that hindsight bias where you kind of take a look at legacy, you take a look at narratives, you take a look at what sounds nice, and then you implant that on some random thing that happened 40 years ago. And you see clearly the reason why Bruce Lee did this is because he was influenced by this guy, and this is why he did this. And maybe the reason why Bruce Lee changed the font or whatever is because he no longer had the same guy to make his certificate, and he had to get someone else, right?
Exactly.
But then you're going to be like, no, this represents Bruce Lee's evolution in Jeet Kune Do, that he changed this aspect of the certificate to this, when it's like, no, that was when he went from Oakland
It's
to LA.
never that deep.
He just needed a different dude to make his certificates.
It's never that
It's never
serious.
that deep, right? So then we come to this, like, why did I choose the scissors Gansau as the logo, right?
It's never that serious.
And so
What?
if I were to croak right now, which
Yeah.
you'd be very happy about.
No, I would kick everything.
He
right.
would never leave the school. He'd be over there in his own corner.
Are you kidding me?
Crying.
The moment I croak, he's sitting in this chair.
Yeah, right.
You're gonna be over there.
What?
And they're gonna have another sound guy.
I would not.
He's been gunning for my position
I
for
would
2 years.
not.
There's no other
I
sound
would
guy
not.
that could do this and have to put up with this kind of nonsense
That's
on a
right.
weekly basis.
That would,
So yeah, and he'll just sit on this side, and he'll just say, "I'm the KFG." He's
No.
not Dre. He'll be like, "He's the KFG."
Yeah,
He's
you know,
waiting.
Yeah, you know, he'll
He's
be wearing
waiting
a pair
for me
of
to die of
aviator-
cirrhosis of the liver.
Yeah, wearing a pair of aviator glasses.
Yeah,
maybe like a
exactly,
cigar and a hat.
exactly.
You know what I mean?
And then I would love to hear his answers to questions.
is that? Is
Oh
that
my God!
why-
I just got the best idea for an episode.
No.
Oh yeah, please.
I'm Dre for a day.
Stop.
You're the KFG. You get to answer the Kung Fu questions for an entire episode.
You know what's
Episode's
strange?
going to be about 20 minutes.
Oh my God.
You know, what's strange is you've never noticed all the alcohol I put in your coffee every week.
Yeah,
Oddly
slowly trying to poison.
Yeah, oddly, I've never noticed it because, it's not happening.
Yes.
It's not happening. But, you've clearly forgotten about all the alcohol you keep putting in your coffee.
That you keep putting in my coffee.
Okay.
Okay.
Enough. So
Enough.
what I'm saying is,
like that.
if I croaked, people would be, at some point people would go like, why did Sifu choose the scissors Gansau?
Yeah.
And they'd be like, well, the scissors Gansau represents the harmonizing
This is
of
what I would say to
heaven
people, yeah.
above
Yeah.
and earth below.
Oh wow.
Right?
Now, I'm gonna say
It is
that.
and the other guy would say, no, it's because the scissors Gansau represents the epitome of Wing Chun. It is a pure attack that can also be used as defense. Therefore, it is simultaneous offense and defense. And the other person would say, no. It's because it's a concept that can be applied to defend the most complex of movements with very simple actions.
Wow.
And then there would be three factions. There would be the people who believed it's the simple movement that can
Heaven and
defend
earth.
advanced stuff, right? The other people who would say that it's the harmonization of heaven and earth. And then the second group, which would say, it is the epitome of simultaneous offense and defense, right? And these three factions of my former students would hate each other, and they would fight, and they would create their own associations.
I'll be the heaven and earth guy.
Yeah, where they, you would have the City Wing Chun heaven and earth guys. You would have the City Wing Chun simultaneous.
yes.
No, because look, this is every martial art. This is
Yes.
every religion. This is everything after the founder croaks.
Wow.
That the students start to argue about the most unimportant shit, and they create these divisions, and then they create these new institutions based on divisions that do not actually exist in the real world.
Would you haunt us with this trash that we're doing?
He'd haunt you three, but he'd be hanging out with me because you know what my faction would be?
What?
The Hot Scissors Gang.
Oh my God. See? Then there's the fourth faction, which has to go there. That's the go there
The
faction.
hot scissors
Hey,
gone.
hey. All right? So,
Hot.
you guys have nothing but gutter brains.
This guy.
I'm just saying it was hot that day and you thought about the Scissors Gang.
It was hot. It was a hot summer
So it's
day.
a bit-
All right,
Hot
so
scissoring.
what I'm trying to say, well, you guys keep dragging it into the gutter with your puerile mindsets, all right? Jesus.
I can't.
Okay?
I just got what he said. I just got it.
Jesus
It just
He just figured it out.
it just hit me. That shows.
And then there's the fifth faction of former City Wing Chun students that, I just got
I
it.
just got it. There's a
All right.
couple I can think of that will be in that faction.
So basically, people after the fact will try to kind of, they will latch on to whatever they think is important.
Yeah.
and then they will try to find certain words said by the founder which support what they think is important, and then use that as a narrative to support theirs, and then swear that this is the only interpretation.
Damn.
And so, yeah, if I died today of cirrhosis of the liver, and then my students decided to argue about why is the Scissors Gansau the logo, and then there would be these 3 or 4 factions, and you guys would all hate each other, created on divisions, which is based all on your bullshit assessment as to why I use that as the logo. And I'm going to tell you why I use that as the logo.
Why?
All right? I'm going to tell you the deep thought process.
Scissors Gansau concepts.
Okay? No. No. All right?
Why?
My good friend,
Yeah.
Özhan.
Dutch. Yes.
All right? Turkish brother from another mother.
Okay.
Lives in Germany.
Yeah.
Known him for a number of years. He's now, I suppose a personal trainer of sorts, but he's like really on the cutting edge of personal training stuff. And he's also trained with Dr. Kenneth J. And he works out of like a really cool club in the Düsseldorf area, I think.
Okay.
And, he also does Wing Chun, and he's come and train here at City Wing Chun. And so he's a, good old friend.
He's my kung fu uncle.
He used to be a bit of a graphic designer. And one time, he took the Scissors Gansau from Siva Leungting's Buji poster.
Yeah.
And he turned it into a silhouette. And he did it with the red, white, and blue like the NBA logo. And I saw that and I was like, yo, that's fire.
He just randomly did it.
He just did it. He showed it to me. I'm
Yeah.
like, yo, can I use that? He's like, yeah, man, you can have it. It's yours. And then so I took it. And then back in the day, I had it as a single shirt. Remember, we used to have the black shirt just with that on there, right?
I love that shirt. I still have mine somewhere.
And then kind of after I quit the IWTA, and then I started to think, okay, well, I have the City Wing Chun logo for my school, but then I started to say, well, maybe that logo can be the logo for my association, for like all the schools that are under our banner. And then I created the City Wing Chun Athletic Association, which I obviously borrowed from the Wing Chun Athletic Association. And what I like about that, the name Athletic Association, is that it's not just a place for martial arts, but it's like for
those who don't know.
Oh God, everyone knows, Dre. Stop making it about you, Jesus.
No, but that's it, right?
No, I get it. Everyone knows. Everyone knows.
No one wants to see your legs.
Plus Dre, you always forget.
Podcast listeners
For
can't see
most
that.
people, this is an audio
Yeah,
podcast.
you're right.
All right,
Yeah,
All
For
right.
everyone on audio, Dre just showed his leg. KFG and I are disturbed.
That's
again.
right. That's right. So I just
My
thought it was really cool, and I took it. I made a T-shirt out of it, and it kind of looks like the NBA logo a little bit, but on Wing Chun, right? And I like the red, white, and blue, not because of the American flag, because the same color as the Cuban flag.
Hey,
And
that's it.
and then eventually, when I created the City Wing Chun Athletic Association, then I did that. I wrote out City Wing Chun Athletic Association, the Chinese, and then put that logo on the side. And then that then became the association logo. But it literally started with, I just thought it was cool. So when I do eventually croak, let it be known, all right, that there was no deeper meaning behind the selection of that logo.
Deep. It's never that serious.
Never that serious.
It's never that serious.
All right? But people will make it that way
Yeah.
because everyone loves a story. Everyone loves there to be deeper meaning. We are pattern-seeking primates, okay? So we will seek patterns and narratives and stories even where none exist because we like these things. It gives meaning.
Those
all
other
right?
primates out there.
Yeah, unlike those non-pattern forming primates.
We won't name them.
Yeah, they keep bumping their heads because they don't figure shit out. All right.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
All right. Let's
We
go.
are the pattern seekers.
Yeah. What else you got?
Let's see. Next up, let me just scroll. My
Yeah, why don't
bad.
you scroll?
I
Yeah,
didn't-
like do your job.
I didn't scroll.
Yeah, scroll.
Okay, what? So next up, was it Dr. Ison?
Yeah.
No, it's
Dryzen.
actually Dryzen.
Oh, come on.
Let me make sure I didn't extra scroll.
It's like I say,
No, yeah,
in
I
the,
scrolled
in
to
the
the
words
right
of the great
place.
Matt Schauber, putting the pathetic in hypothetical. Because it's going to be a hypothetical, isn't it?
I don't know. I haven't read it yet.
Serenity now. All right, let's go.
Serenity now.
Let's go.
Dryzen is
You don't have to
asking.
keep pointing at it. You have not pointed at a single question you've asked me thus far. But when it's Dryzen, suddenly it's the fingers like, all right, here we go. It's right here. Look how he scratches his face. That's called a self-soothing mechanism. In
What?
behavior recognition. All right,
Yeah.
when people are uncomfortable telling lies, they self-soothe.
Are you serious?
That's
a real thing?
Keep going, Dre.
Yeah, keep going, Dre.
Watch all of his self-soothers.
Yeah, no.
Watch.
Hey, what's up, y'all? Let me finish reading. Bro.
He keeps repeating the word reading to emphasize that he's actually reading this. He's not just making it up.
Finish reading.
It's amazing. You can't actually read in general, so like.
Hey, what's up, y'all?
Yeah. What?
He never reads any other question shaking his hand this way.
Absolutely not.
All right, go ahead, Dre.
Cross my arms like I usually do.
Another self-soother.
Absolutely.
Yeah. When you feel uncomfortable with your arms hanging, you cross them because it's a soothing mechanism. It's like you're hugging yourself. So this is also an indication of deception right here. All right, 100%. Continue.
Just want to give y'all a shout out. Say happy Thanksgiving to y'all. Hope you had a great Thanksgiving. Hope you had a great Black Friday as well. Hope you got everything you wanted.
It's Dre Ison suddenly from the south.
Does Dre Ison give notes as to how to read his questions?
No. Dre Ison is everyone.
Yeah.
Okay.
He's a self-soother here.
Absolutely.
All right.
Question.
He has at least 5 signs of deception right now, according to police
KFG.
interrogators.
Yes.
Question for the KFG. Mm-hmm. How in the hell did Jean-Claude Van Damme get that bump on his head? Wow.
That's a serious question.
It's a serious question.
It's not a hypothetical.
I am stunned by this question.
Me too. I've always wondered that.
I've always wondered this.
Yeah, I've always wondered that. He has a very prominent bump on his skull, on the right side. Yeah, I think. Right?
Like it's a protrusion.
Yeah, I mean, it just could be some thing that he was born with, right? I don't think it's
a horn.
I don't think it's like a contusion gone wrong. It could be one single devil horn that is not fully matured, right?
Yeah.
But I will say this.
What?
It is something that once you see it, you can't unsee it.
You will never unsee it.
I believe.
It's always there.
I think it was Mikey Deane who pointed out one of those things to me, but it could be someone else. About Tom Cruise?
About Tom Cruise, absolutely.
Yes. What?
If you look at Tom Cruise's smile now,
one
of his 2 teeth.
The 2 front teeth.
In one of the 2 front teeth. Yeah, one of his 2 teeth. One of his 2 front teeth. He's
had a rough couple of years.
Damn.
Yeah, all the meth. But it's like it's in the dead center. It's in dead center of his mouth,
face.
Of his face.
So like his 2. What are these your incisors or bicuspids? What are these called? Bicuspids or what are the front teeth?
Bicuspids, because the incisors are.
Yeah, those there, right? Yeah. So it's 2. The 2 teeth on the front. If you look at Tom Cruise's smile, one of those is dead center. Like it's right under the center of his nose, right?
Yeah, if you actually put a line down the middle of his face.
It's right under the philtrum, right here. And it's right in the middle. And once you see that, when I saw Top Gun 2, was after he told me that. Yeah. And it's not just like photos. Every time he starts talking, I go, oh my God, his tooth is in the middle of his face.
You are welcome.
Yes. And you cannot unsee it. All right.
Oh God, I gotta see this.
Yes, now. And you won't once you know that about Tom Cruise, you go, hey, oh my God, his tooth is in the middle of his face.
I'm gonna watch all of
them. Well, I don't know why.
All of
you need to only see one.
Yeah.
You'll get the effect after one viewing, right?
After one.
But Jean-Claude Van Damme's head bump, once you see it, you can't unsee it.
Yeah.
So where is it? Because the thing is, I've never known about this head bump until today.
Oh no! It's on his forehead.
Are you serious?
I think it's on the right side.
You've never known about this head bump?
Like a bump here. It just looks like it looks like a small contusion that's sticking out. Yeah.
Oh, wait,
it's about that size and diameter.
So essentially, you've both ruined Bloodsport for me.
Yeah. It's like he's got half a walnut shell under his skin. Okay.
Okay. Well, all right. I always need a good excuse to watch.
No, it is.
That Diesel.
It is. Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
And once you see, and I remember when we had our famous encounter with Jean-Claude Van Damme.
No. Did you see it
then? And he turned around. It was the first thing I looked at.
I can't.
Maybe
I'm done.
You know what?
I'm done.
You know what? Maybe that's why he was salty and blew us off.
Because you looked and you stared at it.
Because it's like someone who's got a big ass mole on their face and you keep staring at their mole, right?
They know.
I saw it. Austin Powers the other day, where he had a Fred Savage, and he's like, "Nice to meet you, mole. Don't say mole.
Moly,
right? And yeah, even in Uncle Buck or whatever, there's a scene where John Candy's in there with like some principal and she had a mole on her face. And he just goes, he throws a quarter at her and he goes, why don't you go downtown and go have a rat and all that thing off your face, right? So there's this thing like when you just see it, you can't stop looking at it. So maybe when I came up behind him and I said, excuse me, Mr. Van Damme, which is the weirdest thing I've ever said. The moment I've said this many times, but you don't understand, all right? There are, once you're at a certain age, you've said many words in many combinations.
All the combinations.
But you know what? There are certain things you've never said in combination,
right,
and probably never will. And every once in a while, especially when you're old like us, you will say a sentence, which is a combination of words that you know the meaning of, but that particular sentence is the first time you've ever uttered those words in that order out of your mouth.
You could have easily just went, yo, JCVD.
Yeah, but I would have never have said that either in my life. Okay?
What? I would have said that.
No, I mean like previously.
Yeah.
And just saying that, excuse me, Mr. Van Damme. And the moment I said that, I was like, oh my God, I never said that before. No. He turns around and looks at me with those eyes. Cold, black eyes, like doll's eyes.
Yeah.
It was Jaws, by the way. He turns around and he looks at me, and I just remember looking at that bump and just for a moment being fixated. I'm like, oh my God, it's Jean-Claude Van Damme's bump that I've only seen in movies. Now I'm looking at it in real life. And then maybe he saw me looking at his bump.
Maybe.
And he was like, yo, screw this guy. All right? Screw this guy, man.
You know what's crazy?
I do.
You never realized that.
No.
And that's what happened.
It could be. It could be. Yeah.
That's why he gave you that cold shoulder.
Yeah.
He's like, yo,
maybe
stop
later.
looking at my bump like
maybe
this, bro.
later. All right.
Bump. Looking
So, yeah. So
his
anyway,
bump browser.
I don't know what the deal with his bump. Did he always have that? I think he always had that bump. He might have been born with that bump.
You know, we need to
Slipped
find
a
out.
walnut shell underneath his forehead.
That's right.
Just when he was
What
on
movie
drugs.
did he get it from?
I think he's always had it.
He always had it.
Yeah. I think if you went back and watched Breakin', when he was in Breakin',
He
in the
probably
background,
got it.
and you
got
look
it in
there, and you could zoom in if you got the
You
new
see it?
4K release of Breakin', and you'd go there and you'd see him in the corner, right?
that
And you'd look and you'd
exist?
go like, dude, he had the bump back then. I don't know, KFG fans, does anyone know why Jean-Claude Van Damme has a bump
Please.
on his head? Please
Chime in.
below. All right, what else you got for me? So many people are confused about basics in Wing Chun Chi Sao. Some view it as a collection of moves, and masters confuse their own students by talking of principles and concepts without telling them what's what. The 15 Chi Sao Fundamentals is my attempt at explaining Wing Chun Chi Sao from a perspective of principles, but also with the basic techniques required to express those principles. It shows the framework for Hong Kong Wing Chun Chi Sao, in particular, the training of Pun Sao and Lap Da. This is necessary training before going on to the higher and more spontaneous expressions of Chi Sao. Right now, if you use the code KFG Chi Sao, you can get a signed copy of my book for the price of the unsigned one. Click on the link in the description below and use the code KFG Chi Sao at checkout to get a signed copy of this full-color, over 230-page manual on the vital foundational training exercise of Wing Chun. This offer is good while supplies last, so get yours today.
Wow. Axel Stone. Mm-hmm. Hey, Alex. I have another question for you regarding Bruce's death.
Oh, here we go, because I'm the expert at that.
You are.
I am not.
You are.
There are no Bruce Lee death experts.
So
if Bruce Lee were alive today, he wouldn't tell you what he died of.
Yeah.
He'd be like, I don't know, man. I just had a headache. And I woke up dead.
Yeah, before you ask this question, because I think it might be sort of relevant, in my Instagram feed of about like all different accounts keep coming up with this, apparently this new thing that someone's discovered that Bruce Lee might have died from drinking too much water.
Oh, Jesus Christ. Yeah, can we address that? The elephant in the room.
Let's just finish the question and we'll go into that.
Okay, let's put a bookmark on that one. I definitely want to talk about that. All right, let's go.
Oh, God. So we know about his drug habit, how stressed he was, how little he was eating, the weight loss, the dehydration, which is okay. Mm-hmm. And how much he was go all the time. I suspect that it was ultimately a combination of things that killed him, including self-neglect in terms of his health and not being able to take a step back. And obviously, the collapse on May 10th showed something was wrong.
Right.
whatever was going on was something that had been going on for a while.
Right.
I just wondered what your opinion is on what actually broke the camel's back. What, in your opinion, was it that finally killed him? Do you think it was the meprobamate?
Well, I can answer that. It was the straw that broke the camel's back.
The cocaine straw.
I can't with you people. I do think his friends Linda did contribute, Linda did contribute to what happened because they were around him enough to see him going downhill. Didn't Dan Inasato say Bruce seemed different or just not himself when he saw him in Hong Kong? And didn't seem to have his well-being, best interest in mind. But I also understand that Bruce was extremely driven, so maybe he didn't listen. At the same time, though, I wonder if these conversations ever even happened. Telling him to slow down, stop the drugs, I don't know. Watching your video on the letters he wrote, it seems clear he was aware it wasn't doing him any good. I'm almost done, by the way.
You know, I think that question was actually only three lines, but you managed to turn it into 3 paragraphs.
Wow.
Really long paragraphs.
The whole situation about Bruce was what happened to him is so complex. So many different facets to the story. I guess it's hard to put it down to one thing. I promise it's almost over. I just wondered if you thought there was a final thing that just caused everything to collapse, if that makes sense. Maybe you could answer my question in a video. Thanks.
I spent the year here one afternoon.
I started reading this at
Half an hour ago.
Yeah, half an
50,
hour ago.
and now it's 54,
Okay.
41.
Yeah.
So I totally agree that there were a number of factors that were not positive that were going on towards the end of Bruce Lee's life. You know, his definitely some kind of self-neglect. I mean, he was kind of burning the candle at both ends, as we like to say here in the good old America. He was probably not taking super good care of himself because he was really overworked. I mean, don't forget, he was 32 years old. You know, 32 is still very young. You feel like you can push it, you know? And it's just possible that he kind of was running himself into the ground with not getting enough sleep, not getting enough food, not getting enough rest. Because it's not just about the rest that you get from sleeping.
Cocaine.
You also need non-sleeping rest as well. So you need to also be able to rest your body while you're awake. That's also part of it for recovery. And you know, on top of the other stress, personal stress, obviously the drug use, the cocaine, all that kind of stuff. I mean, this kind of all mixes to create a somewhat volatile cocktail of not really living well. But I can't say, I mean, again, I get this question all the time, okay? I am not a medical expert, okay? I have a copy of Bruce Lee's autopsy. I've read it. But who the fuck cares about what my opinion is on a medical it makes no sense. People need to stay in their lane, okay? I have zero medical training, all right? Zero medical training, all right? I can speculate that I believe that the cocaine was probably the main factor that contributed to his death. Because one of the problems with all these death theories, like Mikey was talking about earlier, is most of the so-called death theories, including the official one, do not take into consideration what happened on May 10th. All right, so Bruce Lee died on July 20th. All right, so on May 10th, two months and a little bit over a week earlier, he had, for all intents and purposes, an identical incident, okay? He collapsed, he started to have a seizure, he had headache, he had brain swelling. They took him to the hospital in time, and they were able to reduce the swelling. They didn't know why he had gotten the brain swelling. He had ingested some hash or whatever, but he may have taken some other stuff. Because it seems that even to some of his doctors, he was somewhat upfront about his marijuana use, but he was not upfront about his cocaine use. And we know about his cocaine use through the drug letters, but he wasn't telling his doctors that. So that's, I think, why the quote-unquote cannabis got a lot of play in terms of what was going on with him, because he wasn't telling his doctors he was using cocaine. All right? Probably because of how illegal it was in Hong Kong, right? Maybe he was like afraid, that the doctor's going to be a snitch or something like that, right? So I've looked into what cocaine does in terms of breaking down the blood-brain barrier and how this can lead to cerebral edema, which is what Bruce Lee has. There was a very early report in the Hong Kong press after Bruce Lee died that when the paramedics came to pick up Bruce Lee, that they found in Betty's apartment a cocaine straw. That was only mentioned in one very, very early report. And it's Hong Kong press, which can be sensationalistic, so they also may have made it up. But there was no speculation that Bruce had been doing cocaine at that time. And it was reported that there was a cocaine straw found in Betty Tingpei's apartment back then, before anyone even suspected it.
Same room?
Yeah, so it's very possible. And also the other thing is, as many people like to say, well, there was no cocaine in his autopsy. They did not check for cocaine in the toxicology report. I remember once I was going back and forth with someone in the comments. He was like, they didn't found cocaine in his autopsy. I said, yeah, it wasn't in there. They didn't look for it. He's like, see? I go, no. They didn't look for it. I go, it's not in the toxicology report. They looked specifically for cannabis because they knew that he had it. And they looked for poisons and metals. They did not actually look for cocaine, which is kind of weird because you would normally assume they would just do a full screen of everything. Yeah. Check them for everything and then figure out what's what afterwards. They were very specific about what they checked and what they didn't check. So me, as a non-medical professional, knowing that just 2 months prior, probably 2 months prior, he received a $500 order of cocaine from Bob Baker. That meant that he was sitting on a relatively large stash of that stuff, right?
New stash.
And of course, there's some people who speculate that he was selling that stuff because he wanted like a scale and stuff like that. But there's not a whole lot to indicate that was going on. We can speculate that. But what we do know is that around May, around the time of his first collapse, Bruce Lee was in possession of $500 worth in 1973 of cocaine. So
how much is that, Mike?
That's a lot. All right. So anyway, so we can say that probably it had something to do with the cocaine, which they didn't check either time. But that's still speculation. And again, the thing that always bothers me is the fact that someone has a YouTube channel doesn't mean that their opinion is any more qualified than anyone else's, all right? When sometimes people write in the comments, like they get upset because someone said this on YouTube. Well, why do you give a fuck what someone says on YouTube, all right? And my opinion on Bruce Lee's death, okay, means a big, fat f***ing zero because 1, I wasn't there. 2, I'm only operating with the same level of information that anyone else really has access to. 3, maybe what makes me different is that I don't really have any skin in the game. If Bruce Lee died from cocaine use, if he died from cannabis poisoning, if he died from equagesic, if he died from ninjas, if he died from Betty was autoerotic asphyxiating him, whatever, none of that would change anything for me in terms of what I think about Bruce Lee and his legacy. All right? And I don't have access to the, CCTV camera inside Betty Tingpei's bedroom on that day.
Oh, man.
So literally, I could put together all these things that would make sense. The thing with the Bruce Lee death conspiracies is that if you hone in on one of them, you can easily construct, using facts of the case, anything that will support what your theory is, and you can make it sound reasonable if you argue it in a reasonable way. And then people go, wow, well, I didn't really think that the official Maprobamate thing made sense, but since so-and-so explained it to me, actually now it does make sense. Yes, because you can make that make sense. You can also make him being killed by triads in the park, being hit in the back of the head, the Fan Siu Wong's father's story, you can also make that seem plausible, all right? Because then you could look at the autopsy photo where his neck looked like this, and say, something was going on there. And then you can make the cocaine thing work, right? And then so you pick one, you cherry pick the facts that support it, you say it convincingly on a YouTube video, and then anyone who disagrees with you gets upset. And then anyone who agrees with you posts that video saying, no, this is the proof. It's not proof. There is no proof, all right? Anything that I could say about Bruce Lee's death is proof of only one thing, proof of my opinion. It's not proof of the facts. And we can have these conversations, but I think where the conversations need to end is in the definitive saying of what killed him. I believe it was cocaine. I also know that I could be totally wrong. And if someone comes and proves me wrong, I'm fine with it, because him dying of cocaine is not a hill that I'm trying to die on.
Okay.
It's just, given all the new information that we have, it seems to be a pretty plausible reason. Okay. But I could also be wrong, and I'm also fine with being wrong. Like the thing is that because of people like me or they like what I say, they're like, well, the KFG believes that Bruce Lee died of cocaine. Yeah, so fucking what? All right? Doesn't mean that he did. All right? Like, stop putting people on YouTube on pedestals. The fact that you see them on your phone or your TV screen gives them no credibility. What someone's opinion is about Bruce Lee, who didn't know Bruce Lee or doesn't like Bruce Lee or super likes Bruce Lee, is nothing more than just their opinion and needs not be anything more than that. You can look at it, like it, not respond to it. You have the option of not responding to what people say online. All right.
I want to know.
So anyway, Mikey, what he's talking about real quick is that it's been doing the rounds recently. Of course, by the time this episode comes out, it's probably going to be a few weeks separated from it. But like, I've been getting this. And the unfortunate thing about my social media is I have lots of followers on social media. And they very well intentioned. This article came out that, they believe the new Bruce Lee death theory is that he died from drinking too much water. Into hypernatremia or whatever, like basically you kind of flood your system and your kidneys can't handle it, kind of thing, right? Wow. And it's also interesting. I'm not a conspiracy theorist, okay, at all. But it is sometimes interesting that suddenly scientists found this totally benign way that Bruce Lee died, so we can maybe stop talking about the drug letters. You understand what I'm saying? Like, no, it wasn't cocaine. It wasn't even equagesic. He was drinking too much water.
Let me tell you, firsthand, untrue, impossible.
Well, it's not impossible. It is actually possible. No,
firsthand, I know it can't happen because I drank so much water once.
No, Dre.
Okay,
All
no,
right?
Dre.
No,
No.
Dre.
No.
This is called confirmation bias.
Okay.
All right? I drank so much water once.
Yeah.
All right, is your subjective experience being placed on a medical diagnosis of something that actually can happen, Dre. It actually does happen, Dre. Yes.
Okay, so here's
All
the
right?
other thing about that. So you say the conspiracy theory about the trying to avoid the drugs. Anytime this has happened in England, which it has happened, it's because the person did too much ecstasy. And their brain wasn't able to tell them that they were overhydrating, because when you take drugs, you're supposed to hydrate, right? So this coming as a conspiracy theory to try and get them to turn away from the drugs, it's actually not very good, because it just kind of reinforces.
Yeah, but I think not a lot of people are that savvy about it.
No, absolutely.
It just seems that like now people are like, or maybe certain interested parties a year after the drug letters are kind of starting to think, I think people are starting to kind of generally feel that maybe the cocaine had something to do with it. Let's find a very benign way for, which is funny. It's like, why didn't they just go with the heat stroke theory from Matt Pauly, even though it's probably not true. But the heat stroke theory at least is a very benign way, like, he was just too hot or whatever, right? So I kind of feel like it seems like for certain parties they're really pushing it. And here's the thing. These kind of things show up on my social media automatically because I follow only martial arts stuff. So the day the article came out, I saw a post of the article on my social media. And then hundreds of people in the next 3 days send me that article. Like, yo, KFG, did you read this? And they're sending it to me on Facebook. They're sending them to me on Instagram. They're tagging me in the posts of it. They're tagging me in the comments of it. And I'm just like, guys, when an article comes out about Bruce Lee, all right, I'm good. I probably got it before you.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't need hundreds of people to send me this shit. And it also doesn't make sense because if you look at Bruce Lee's body in the last few days of his life, all right.
Yeah. They don't look like
the idea that this
water.
guy was overloaded on water, all right, when he was probably the most striated in his life at the time of his death, seems really difficult because we've seen Bruce Lee less striated, like in the 60s, where he had, he was fit, but he wasn't like that super striated, like almost bodybuilder type level of body fat. And you see that especially after Enter the Dragon, where he was way more striated than he was in Way of the Dragon. And when you see him, he was super gaunt and super striated in those last few months. And to think that this represented a water-loaded Bruce Lee, it seems really far-fetched. And I'm not a conspiracy theorist. Like, I don't believe the drug letters were Quentin Tarantino's revenge on Shannon Lee or whatever.
Oh, wow.
It's easy to draw these kind of connections. But me being a non-conspiracy theorist, I would just say I find the timing of this benign water reason for him dying in the wake of the drug letters and all the other stuff that's come out kind of curious. And that's all I got to say about that. All right, everyone. Well, I hope you enjoyed that episode of the Kung Fu Genius. As always, don't forget to like this episode, subscribe to the Kung Fu Genius, hit that bell for notifications. And if you have any questions you want me to answer on a future episode, go ahead and write those in the comments below. And as always, I'll see you guys next time.
Word is I'm a kung fu genius. Technique speaks for me, not lineage. Forget Jet Li, cause I'm the one. Many call me seafood, but to you I'm sea gung. And I produce masters. You surpassed us. Your kung fu stiffer than corpse and caskets. City Wing Chun is the house I built. Violate the gate and your blood gets spilt. Alex Richter, always the victor.
Professional
Yeah,
twat.
professional twat.
Love being a professional.
All right, you're a professional twat.
Twat.
And she's, dude, all of that's got to be edited out, Dre, and you just brought it back in. No, I know what it's like to edit. You can you can't like reference something he just cut out. It makes no sense.
Well, yeah, no, Andrew's great, and I've seen how he edits. He sometimes forgets to edit out F-bombs. He'll be fine.
Yeah, what's interesting is Andrew he's consistently inconsistent with my F-bombs. I'll watch an episode, and I usually try to watch the episode when he gives them to me before I send them out to Patreon, just to make sure. But I don't have time anymore. I mean, like the last 5 to 6 episodes, I just take his word for it that it's okay.
Okay.
And I post it out there, and then I'll watch it sometimes on Monday when we have the premiere with everyone, and then it'll be like, so F-bomb is deleted out, and then halfway through the episode, there'll be like 2 F-bombs that he leaves in. And I'm like, oh man.
Yeah, I decided his WWE ring name is the Demonetizer.
Demonetizer, yeah.
You just got to control yourself. That's what I think.
Yeah, it's the problem is me.
Problem is
right?
you.
Yeah. Who taught you how to drop F-bombs? You, all right?
Yeah.
I learned it by watching you.
Yeah.
All right. Shout out to 1980s drug commercials.
Yes, the best ones.
Yeah. I mean, now they're actual
geez.
commercials for weed, I suppose. But back in the 80s, this was your brain.
Yeah.
This is your brain on drugs.
Them
right?
PDAs. I mean PSAs.
Yes, PSAs. Yeah. No
Really?
PDAs for you.
Yeah, definitely no. Especially not when we go to Sapphire 39 for Paige Van Zandt.
Jesus Christ.
What? And
Yes.
thanks.
Yeah.
Now my lady is gonna know.
Yeah, do not edit that out, Andrew.
No,
All right,
edit
okay.
that
Absolutely.
totally.
Okay, so, okay, then I'm gonna very slyly hand you over the tablet
That was
because
smooth.
Dre's computer is not working. So,
User error, one would
user
say.
error has never shut it off in the 11 years he's owned it.
The acronym in my industry is computer user needs training.
And whatever was going. Oh, I just.
He has one job, ladies and gentlemen.
Wait, hold on, man. Why is it going there? Obviously, okay, May 10th. And didn't it just happen? I just wondered what. You know what's funny is I put my finger there so I wouldn't lose space in reading.
Yeah.
And I totally
Yeah, and then you were like, wait,
botched it.
was
jacked
my
it up.
finger where I'm supposed to
Yeah.
read, or is it on the next line or the line
Exactly.
before? Yeah, I know.
lots of gems, lots of F-bombs, and lots of Ask KFG. Ask KFG. Anything. AMA. All right, peeps. On today's episode of the Kung Fu Genius, the genius will be answering all sorts of hot nonsense from YouTube. Lots of gems, lots of F-bombs, lots of ass. Go ahead, come on. Ask them.
You got one more chance. I'm gonna beat your ass if you don't do it this time. I'm gonna beat you on the episode.